Taeho Kim stared at the red numbers on his computer screen. Each day they got worse. The oxygen levels in Earth's atmosphere were dropping faster than anyone had predicted. He rubbed his tired eyes and looked out the window of his laboratory. The sky was a sickly yellow color, and he could see the dome that covered Seoul in the distance. "Dr. Kim, you need to see this," his assistant called from across the room. Taeho walked over to where Mi Young was pointing at another screen. The numbers there made his heart sink even lower. 2 years, he whispered. "We have 2 years before the air becomes too thin to breathe." Mi Young nodded sadly. "The last forest in Brazil died yesterday. The oxygen recycling plants can't keep up anymore." Taeho felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. As the lead scientist at the Global Environmental Recovery Institute, he was supposed to find solutions, but there were no more solutions. Humanity had used up everything. The oceans were dead. The forests were gone. Even the artificial systems they had built were failing. Across the city, So Young Park sat in a meeting room with world leaders. Their faces appeared on screens around her, all looking desperate and angry. The President of America was shouting at the Prime Minister of India. The leader of the African Union was demanding more resources. Everyone wanted someone else to blame. Enough. So Young slammed her hand on the table. As director of the United Earth Defense Council, she had seen many crises, but nothing like this. "Fighting will not give us more oxygen. We need to work together." "Easy for you to say," the American president replied. "Your country still has some green zones left." So Young looked at the man on the screen. "We have 3 small parks under domes. That's all. Everyone is dying, not just you." The meeting continued for hours, but nothing was decided. Countries were too busy protecting what little they had left to help each other. So Young knew that this was how humanity would end, not with a war or a disaster, but with people fighting over scraps while the world died around them. High above Earth, Captain Hyunwoo Lee was having the strangest day of his life. He commanded the space station that watched for asteroids and monitored the planet's condition. His job was usually boring, but today something impossible was happening. "Captain, there's a ship approaching." His communications officer, Jun Ho, called out. "It's not one of ours." Hyunwoo floated over to look at the screen. A massive ship, unlike anything humans had ever built, was moving toward Earth. It was beautiful, with flowing lines that looked more grown than constructed. "Have you tried to contact them?" Hyunwoo asked. "Yes, sir." No response on any frequency. Hyunwoo felt his stomach drop. Earth was dying, and now aliens were coming. It could only mean one thing. They were here to take what was left of the planet. He reached for the emergency button that would warn Earth's defenses, but stopped when Junho spoke again. "Sir, they're sending a message now." The voice that came through the speakers was strange but clearly speaking Korean. "People of Earth, we come in peace. We have watched your world struggle and we wish to help. We are the Velthari." Hyunwoo stared at the screen showing the alien ship. Help? Why would aliens want to help humanity? On Earth, the alien message was broadcast everywhere. People stopped fighting in the streets to listen. World leaders paused their arguments. Even Taeho stopped looking at his depressing numbers to watch the news. The alien ship landed in a field, outside Seoul, and the world held its breath. So Young was chosen to make first contact along with a team of diplomats and scientists. As they approached the ship, a door opened and 3 figures emerged. They were tall and thin, with skin that seemed to shimmer like water. Their eyes were large and kind, and they moved with a grace that made them seem almost like they were dancing. The one in front stepped toward So Young and bowed in the traditional Korean way. "I am Advisor Kethan of the Velthari," the being said in perfect Korean. "We have come to help your dying world." So Young bowed back, trying to hide her confusion. "Why would you help us? What do you want in return?" Kethan's expression became sad. "We ask for nothing except friendship. Long ago, our world faced the same death that yours faces now. We were helped by another species, but we learned the gift too late to save our home. Now we travel the stars, helping others as we were once helped." Taeho was part of the scientific team studying the aliens. What he learned amazed him. The Velthari had technology that could clean the air in months instead of centuries. They had machines that could bring dead oceans back to life. They had seeds that could grow forests in places where nothing had lived for decades. "This is impossible," Tejo said, as Keithan showed him a small device that could process the air in an entire city. "Nothing is impossible when life is at stake," Keithan replied. "Your species has great potential. We have seen your art, your music, your stories. You deserve to continue." Over the following days, more Velthari ships arrived. They brought thousands of their people and amazing machines. They asked for nothing: no payment, no land, no resources. They simply began working to save Earth. The first atmospheric processor was installed outside Seoul. Within hours, the air began to clear. Plants that had been dying for years suddenly began to grow again. Birds appeared in the sky for the first time in decades. Children came out of the domed cities to breathe fresh air. So Young watched from her office as the yellow sky slowly turned blue. For the first time in years, she felt hope. But she also felt confused. Why were the aliens doing this? What species would travel across the galaxy just to help strangers? She found Keithan standing in the field where his ship had landed, watching human children play in the grass that was growing there. "I don't understand," she said to him. "Your people are saving us and you ask for nothing. Why?" Keithan looked at her with those large, kind eyes. "Because someone must choose to nurture life rather than hoard it. Because kindness to a younger species is never wasted. Because when we are gone, the universe will remember that the Velthari chose to help rather than conquer." So Young felt a chill at his words. "When you are gone?" But Keithan had already turned away, watching the children play in the new grass under the slowly clearing sky. 6 months after the Velthari arrived, Earth looked like a different planet. The oceans were turning blue again. Green covered the land where there had been only dust. Cities removed their protective domes for the first time in 50 years. Children who had never seen real sunlight played in actual forests. Ji-hoon Choi was one of the engineers working with Velthari technology. Every morning, he went to the processing plant outside Busan, where massive machines cleaned the ocean, water. The Velthari had taught him how to operate the controls, but something bothered him about the way the machines worked. "The energy readings don't make sense," he told his supervisor, Dr. Nam. "According to our instruments, these machines should need 100 times more power to do what they're doing." Dr. Nam shrugged. "Alien technology. Maybe they're just more advanced than we thought." But Ji-hoon couldn't let it go. He had been an engineer for 15 years and energy had to come from somewhere. He started taking readings when the Velthari weren't looking. What he discovered made him feel sick. The machines weren't just using electricity. They were drawing energy from the Velthari themselves. Every time one of the aliens operated a processor, their body became a little dimmer, a little less bright. The shimmering quality of their skin would fade slightly. Yoon Ji-han was having similar discoveries. As a xenobiologist, she studied how the Velthari restoration worked. She watched them plant seeds that grew into full trees in days instead of years. She saw them touch dead soil and make it rich and fertile again. But she also noticed that the Velthari were changing. When they first arrived, there were about 50,000 of them. Now she could only count 45,000. When she asked Keithan about the missing ones, he simply said they had returned to the eternal cycle. "I don't think they're just dying naturally," Yoonji told her research partner, Dr. Yoon. "I think the restoration process is killing them." "That's impossible," Dr. Yoon replied. "Why would they create technology that kills them?" Yoonji had been wondering the same thing. She started studying the Velthari more carefully, taking medical scans when they would allow it. What she found confirmed her worst fears. Every Velthari who worked with the restoration machines was slowly losing their life force. The energy that powered their amazing technology was coming from their own bodies. They were literally giving their lives to save Earth. Woo Jin Song had been a military officer before the Velthari arrived. Now he worked as a diplomat, trying to understand their culture and history. The more he learned, the more worried he became. "They've done this before," he told So Young during one of their weekly meetings. I've been talking to their historians. The Velthari have saved 17 other dying worlds. So Young looked up from the reports she was reading. 17? That's amazing. No, it's terrible, Wu Jin replied. Each time they saved a planet, more of them died. They started with millions of people. Now there are less than 45,000 left. The room became very quiet. So Young set down her papers and looked at Wu Jin carefully. Are you saying they're sacrificing themselves to save us? I think they're sacrificing themselves to save everyone. It's like they can't stop helping others even though it's destroying their own species. So Young felt her heart breaking. The wonderful beings who had saved humanity were dying because of it. She had to know the truth. That evening she found Kethan in the garden he had created behind the government building. The flowers there bloomed in colors that had never existed on Earth before. He was sitting quietly, and she noticed that his skin was much less bright than when they first met. Kethan, she said softly, we need to talk. He looked up at her with tired eyes. You have discovered our secret. The machines are powered by your life force, aren't they? Kethan nodded slowly. Yes. Our technology requires what you might call our soul energy. Each time we use it, we give up part of ourselves. So Young sat down beside him. Then stop. Please just stop helping us and save yourselves. We cannot stop, Kethan replied. It is not in our nature anymore. Long ago our world was dying just like yours. Another species helped us, but we learned their gifts too late to save our home. By the time we mastered the restoration technology, our planet was dead. So you became nomads. Yes, but more than that. We decided that our purpose was to prevent other worlds from suffering as ours did. We have spent centuries developing technology that can save dying planets. The cost is our own lives, but we accepted that cost long ago. So Young felt tears in her eyes. You're going extinct to save others. We are already extinct, Kethan said gently. Our world is gone. Our culture exists only in our memories. But the worlds we save will continue. The species we help will grow and prosper. Through them, something of us will remain. How many of you are left? Kethan was quiet for a moment. When we arrived, we were 50,000. Now we are 38,000. By the time Earth is fully restored, perhaps 20,000 will remain. So Young couldn't speak. These beautiful, kind beings were dying to save her world, and they acted like it was the most natural thing in the universe. There must be another way, she finally said. Our scientists are smart. Maybe we can find a way to power your machines without killing you. Kethan smiled sadly. 17 species have tried, So Young. All failed. The restoration technology requires life force, and only the Velthari can provide it. When the last of us dies, the machines will stop working, but by then the planets we have saved will be stable enough to survive on their own. What about your own survival? What about your species' future? Our future is in the worlds we save. Every restored planet carries a piece of the Velthari within its renewed life. We may disappear, but life itself will remember us. So Young stood up, her fists clenched. No. I refuse to accept that. Humanity won't just watch you die after you saved us. Kethan looked surprised. What will you do? I don't know yet, So Young said, but we're going to find a way to save you, just like you saved us, I promise you that. As she walked away, Kethan watched her go with something that might have been hope in his eyes. Behind him, the alien flowers continued to bloom in their impossible colors, beautiful and alive in the garden of a dying species. Sungmin Yu had never worked so hard in his life. As a quantum physicist, he understood energy better than most people, but Velthari technology was like nothing he had ever seen. For months, he had been studying the energy patterns that powered their restoration machines. It's not just life force, he explained to the emergency science committee that So Young had formed. It's more complicated than that. The Velthari aren't just powering the machines. They're creating some kind of quantum connection with the restored areas. Taeho leaned forward in his chair. What kind of connection? Their life energy becomes permanently linked to the ecosystems they restore. That's why the restoration lasts forever instead of fading when the machines are turned off. The Velthari literally become part of the restored environment. Nari Kim, Taiho's daughter, was only 22, but already one of the best biotechnology experts in the world. She had been studying Velthari biology for months. "I think I understand what Sungmin means," she said. "The Velthari who die don't really die. Their energy stays connected to the plants and animals they helped." "You mean they become ghosts?" asked Donghyun Lim, the engineer leading the human effort to understand Velthari sacrifice. "Not ghosts," Nari replied. "More like, they become part of the life itself. Every tree they helped grow, every fish they brought back to life, every breath of clean air, it all carries a tiny piece of their essence." Sungmin nodded excitedly. "Exactly. And here's the important part. Human bioelectric fields operate on a completely different frequency than Velthari ones. We might be able to power their machines without creating the same quantum entanglement." The room fell silent. Finally, Donghyun spoke. "Are you saying we could save them?" "I'm saying we might be able to take over the restoration work ourselves," Sungmin replied. "If we can modify their machines to work with human energy instead of Velthari energy." So Young felt her heart racing. "How long would it take to test this?" "Give me 2 weeks," Sungmin said. Meanwhile, Nari was making her own discoveries. She had been studying tissue samples from Velthari, who had volunteered to help her research. What she found was both amazing and terrible. "Dad, look at this," she said, showing Taeho her microscope screen. "This is a cell from Keithan's skin. See how it glows?" Taeho looked through the microscope. The cell was indeed glowing with a soft, beautiful light. "What makes it do that?" "Quantum energy storage," Nari explained. "Every Velthari cell can store and release quantum energy. That's how they power their machines. But look at this sample, from a Velthari who died last week." She switched slides. This cell was dark and empty. "When they power the restoration machines, they don't just use their current energy," Nari continued. "They use up their storage capacity. Eventually, their cells can't hold energy anymore and they die. But human cells don't work the same way. No. Human cells generate bioelectric energy differently. We might be able to power Velthari machines without dying from it." 2 weeks later, Sung Min called an emergency meeting. He looked excited and exhausted at the same time. "We did it," he announced. "We successfully powered a small restoration device using human volunteers." Everyone started talking at once, but So Young held up her hand for quiet. "Tell us everything." "We modified one of their air processors to accept human bioelectric input," Sungmin explained. 5 volunteers worked together to power it for 6 hours. They were tired afterward but completely healthy. The machine worked perfectly. "Any side effects?" Taeho asked. "Actually yes, but good ones," Sungmin smiled. The volunteers reported, feeling more connected to nature, more aware of the environment around them. "We think the process creates a mild bond with the restored ecosystem, but nothing like what happens to the Velthari." Donghyun was taking notes as fast as he could. "How many humans would it take to replace one Velthari?" "About 12, working in shifts," Sungmin replied. "But here's the amazing part. We think the process might actually be good for humans." The volunteers said they felt healthier and more energetic after the experience. So Young stood up. "We need to tell Keithan immediately." They found the Velthari advisor in his ship, looking weaker than ever. His skin barely glowed now, and his movements were slow and careful. When they explained their discovery, he listened quietly. "You believe humans can power our restoration technology?" he asked. "We've already done it," Nari said excitedly. "We can save you. We can take over the restoration work." Keithan was quiet for a long time. "In our history, no species has ever successfully adapted our technology. Many have tried. Maybe they didn't try hard enough," So Young said firmly. "Or maybe humans are different." "Perhaps," Keithan agreed. "But there is something you must understand. Our restoration network spans 17 worlds. Each world requires constant maintenance. If you take over this responsibility, you will be connected to all of them forever." Tejo spoke up. What do you mean connected? The restoration network is more than just machines keeping planets alive, Kethan explained. Over time, it has become a form of communication system. The 17 worlds we have saved can sense each other across space. They share information, resources, even thoughts sometimes. Like a galactic internet? Donghyun asked. More than that. More like a shared consciousness that preserves the independence of its parts while allowing them to work together. So Young felt a chill. Are you saying that if we take over your work, humanity will become part of some kind of hive mind? No, Kethan replied. You will remain yourselves. But you will also be connected to something larger. The network enhances rather than controls. It helps species grow and develop in ways they never could alone. What happened to the other 17? Species you saved? Nari asked. Kethan's expression became thoughtful. They thrived. They became more than they were before. Some developed technology beyond anything we imagined. Others became great explorers or artists or philosophers. The network helps each species find its own best path. And they all work together to help save other dying worlds? Tejo asked. Yes. The network identifies civilizations in danger and guides the member species to help them. It is a cycle of salvation that grows stronger with each new world saved. So Young looked around the room at her colleagues. They were all thinking the same thing. This was bigger than just saving the Velthari. This was about joining something incredible. Kethan, she said finally, we want to try. We want to save you and join your network. Kethan smiled, and for the first time in months, his skin brightened a little. Then we will begin immediately. But I must warn you, once you join the network, humanity will never be the same. We're already not the same, So Young replied. You changed us the moment you decided to help us. Now it's our turn to change. Heejin Kwan stood on the bridge of humanity's first interstellar ship and watched an alien sun rise over a dead world. This was Kepler 442b, the third planet the Velthari had saved, and it was dying again. Without Velthari to maintain the Yao restoration systems, the atmosphere was slowly failing. How many Velthari are maintaining this world? She asked Kethan, who stood beside her looking weaker than ever. 12, he replied sadly. There were originally 300 here, but as their numbers on other worlds decreased, we had to move them around. Hyojin nodded grimly. The Velthari population was now down to 15,000 across all 17 worlds. Each world needed at least 10 Velthari to keep its restoration systems running, which meant they were spread dangerously thin. Not for much longer, she said confidently. Jae-sung, are the symbiosis pods ready? Jae-sung Park looked up from his control panel. As the lead engineer for the Human Velthari Cooperation Project, he had spent the last year developing technology that would allow humans to safely power Velthari machines. The symbiosis pods were his greatest achievement, chambers where humans and Velthari could share the energy burden of restoration work. Ready, Captain, he reported. We have 50 volunteers prepared for the transition. The next few hours would make history. If the experiment worked, humanity would take over restoration duties on Kepler 442b. If it failed, another world would die, and the Velthari would become even fewer. Hyojin watched as the first volunteers entered the symbiosis pods. These were specially trained humans who had spent months learning to control their bioelectric fields. They would work alongside Velthari partners to power the massive atmospheric processors that kept this world alive. Beginning power transfer, Jae-sung announced. On the screens around them, energy readings began to shift. The familiar Velthari quantum signatures were joined by something new. Human bioelectric patterns that pulsed with a different rhythm, but somehow harmonized perfectly. It's working, breathed Dr. Minho Shin, who was coordinating the entire 17-world project from Earth. His voice came through the communication system with barely contained excitement. The atmospheric processors are running at full capacity, but the Velthari energy drain has dropped by 80%. Over the following weeks, more human teams arrived at Kepler 442b. They established permanent colonies around each restoration site, with humans and Velthari working together to maintain the planet's artificial ecosystem. The process was exhausting for the humans, but nothing like the deadly drain the Velthari had endured. Something unexpected began to happen. The humans working in the symbiosis pods started reporting strange experiences. They could sense the planet's health as if it were their own body. They knew when storms were coming days in advance. They could feel the growth of forests on the other side of the world. "We're becoming connected to the planet itself," reported Sujin, one of the first human operators. "I can feel every tree, every stream, every breath of wind." But the real surprise came when the humans began communicating with the Restoration Network. The quantum connections that linked all 17 saved worlds suddenly became accessible to human minds. "Captain," Jae-sung called out during their third week on Kepler 442b, "you need to see this." Yijin came over to look at his screen. "What am I looking at?" "Communication signals," Jae-sung replied, with wonder in his voice. "The network is trying to talk to us." The signals weren't words or sounds, they were concepts and feelings that appeared directly in the minds of humans connected to the restoration systems. Images of other worlds, other species, other civilizations that had been saved by the Velthari. Through the network, humanity learned about the Zephyrians of Tau Ceti, who had developed incredible music after being saved. The Christarch of Wolf, 359, who had become master engineers and built cities of living crystal. The Driftkin of Gliese 6C, who had learned to travel between dimensions. Each species that joins the network becomes more than they were before, Kethan explained to Hyejin, as they watched human technicians working with Velthari partners. "The network doesn't change what you are. It helps you become the best version of yourselves." "What will humanity become?" Hyejin asked. "We cannot know," Kethan replied. "But I suspect you will become the bridges between species. Humans seem to have an unusual gift for understanding and working with others." The transition of Kepler 442b took 6 months, but it was completely successful. The Velthari, who had been slowly dying to maintain the world, were now healthy and stable. The human colonists established permanent settlements and took over all restoration duties. More importantly, humanity had learned how to expand the network. Human engineers began designing new types of restoration equipment that were more efficient than the original Velthari technology. They created hybrid systems that could be powered by multiple species working together. Over the next 2 years, similar transitions happened on 8 more worlds. Each success meant fewer Velthari were dying to maintain restoration systems. Each success meant more humans joining the galactic network of consciousness. Min-ho coordinated the entire operation from Earth, which had become the headquarters, for what people were calling the Great Reversal, humanity's effort to save their saviors. His office was filled with screens showing the status of all 17 worlds, and he could feel the health of each one through his own connection to the network. "Status report," he called out during one of his daily briefings. 12 worlds successfully transitioned to human Velthari hybrid operation, reported his assistant Young Mi. 5 worlds still operating on pure Velthari energy, but transition teams are en route. Velthari population status, stable at 11,000. No deaths from restoration drain in the past month. Min-ho smiled. For the first time since the EEEE project began, the Velthari weren't dying. But the really amazing news was what was happening to the network itself. "Sir," Youngmi continued, "the network is showing new activity. The scientists think it's evolving." "Evolving how?" "It's starting to identify new civilizations that need help. Worlds we never knew existed. The network is expanding its awareness beyond the original 17 planets." Min-ho felt a chill of excitement. The restoration network wasn't just maintaining saved worlds anymore. It was actively searching for new ones to save. On the bridge of her ship, now orbiting the 15th world they had helped transition, Hyejin received a message that would change everything. It came not through normal communication channels, but directly through the network itself, appearing in her mind as clear as spoken words. 43 worlds in danger. Species dying across the galaxy. Help needed. She called for Kethan immediately, When the Velthari advisor arrived, she described the message. "The network has awakened," he said with wonder in his voice. "This has never happened before. The network was always passive, only maintaining what already existed. But now it's actively trying to save more worlds." Hyjin finished. "Kethin, what does this mean?" The old Velthari looked out at the stars visible through the ship's windows. "I think it means that your species has given the network something it never had before. The desire to grow and expand rather than simply preserve. So what do we do?" Kethin smiled, and his skin glowed brighter than it had in months. "We answer the call. We save 43 more worlds. And then we see how many more the network finds after that." Looking out at the vast galaxy filled with stars and possibilities, Hyjin felt the weight and wonder of humanity's new purpose. They had saved their saviors. Now together, they would save everyone else. Sujin Lee was 90 years old now, but her mind was sharper than ever. As the first human Velthari ambassador, she had lived through humanity's greatest transformation. She stood before the Galactic Assembly, a massive chamber orbiting the galactic core where representatives from 200 species had gathered. The chamber itself was a marvel, a living structure grown by the Crystarch, powered by human-designed fusion cores, and filled with the music of the Zephyrians. Every species in the network had contributed something to create this meeting place among the stars. 10 years ago, Sujin began, her voice carried to every corner of the chamber by Velthari quantum communication. The galaxy was filled with dying worlds and isolated species. Today we are connected by bonds stronger than gravity and deeper than space itself. She gestured to the viewing wall, which showed a map of the galaxy. Points of light marked the worlds connected to the restoration network. What had started as 17 lonely dots had become thousands of glowing nodes, all pulsing in harmony. The network that began as a desperate attempt to save dying worlds has become something greater, she continued. It has become proof that cooperation is more powerful than conquest, that helping others makes us stronger rather than weaker. Young-Ho Kim, Taeho's son and now the lead quantum engineer for network expansion, watched from the gallery. At 45, he had spent his entire adult life working to expand and improve the restoration network. What amazed him most wasn't the technology they had developed, but how it had changed the species that used it. Humanity had become the galaxy's bridge builders, able to help any species connect to the network regardless of their biology or culture. The Velthari had evolved from dying refugees into the network's wise guides, their population now stable at 50,000 and growing slowly. Each species brought unique gifts that made the whole network stronger. The network has identified 43 civilizations on the brink of extinction, Sujin announced to the assembly. But it has also discovered something more troubling. There are signals coming from beyond our galaxy. Signals that suggest a threat unlike anything we have faced. A murmur ran through the assembled representatives. Captain Ari Choi, now an admiral commanding the joint exploration vessel Unity's Promise, stood to address the assembly. 3 months ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected energy patterns at the edge of the galaxy, she reported. The patterns are similar to what dead worlds look like just before their final collapse. But these signals are coming from empty space. Young-Ho felt a chill. He had helped design those monitoring stations, and he knew what Ari was describing. Something is killing entire solar systems before life can even develop there. Sujin nodded grimly. The network has shown us images through quantum resonance. There is something in the darkness between galaxies that destroys life wherever it finds it. It has already consumed 2 nearby galaxies completely. The chamber fell silent. Representatives from species that had never known fear began to understand what terror meant. "How long do we have?" asked the representative of the Driftkin, their voice echoing across dimensional barriers. "The network estimates 50 years before the first scouts reach our galaxy," Sujin replied. "Perhaps 100 years before the main force arrives." "What can we do against something that destroys entire galaxies?" This from the Crystarch representative, their crystal body chiming with worried harmonics. Young-Ho stood up in the gallery. "We do what we've always done. We help each other. We grow stronger together. Over the following months, the network began preparing for the greatest challenge in its history. Species that had spent centuries developing art and philosophy suddenly turned their attention to defense and survival. But this wasn't like the old days of isolated worlds building weapons to fight alone. The network coordinated everything. The Crystarch began growing massive defensive structures in key star systems. The Zephyrians used their music to develop new forms of energy manipulation. The Driftkin explored alternate dimensions where they could hide entire populations if, necessary. Humanity took on the role they had always played best, bringing everyone together. Human ships traveled to the farthest reaches of the galaxy, making contact with species that had never heard of the network and convincing them to join the growing alliance. "We found another 15 civilizations this month," reported Captain Jinwoo Park, Young Ho's nephew, during one of the monthly coordination meetings. Most of them agreed to join the network immediately when we explained the situation. "Any difficulties?" asked Admiral Ari. "Some species are suspicious of our motives," Jinwoo admitted. "They can't understand why we would help them without wanting something in return." Young Ho smiled. "Give them time. Once they see how the network actually works, they'll understand." The network was indeed growing faster than ever before. What had taken decades to accomplish in the early days now happened in months. Species that joined the network found their technology advancing rapidly, their understanding of the universe expanding, their connections to other civilizations deepening. But the most important development was happening at the network's core. The quantum consciousness that connected all the saved worlds was evolving again, becoming something unprecedented in the universe. "It's not just coordinating our activities anymore," Young Ho explained to Sujin during one of their strategy sessions. "The network is beginning to think and plan independently. It's developing its own personality." "Is that dangerous?" Sujin asked. "I don't think so. The network's personality seems to be based on the best qualities of all the species connected to it. It values life, promotes cooperation, and protects the weak. It's like the galaxy's conscience." As the threat from beyond drew closer, the network began revealing its true power. It could accelerate the development of primitive species, guiding them through thousands of years of evolution in mere decades. It could coordinate the resources of hundreds of worlds to support species in need. It could even predict where new civilizations would develop and prepare help for them in advance. The network had become more than a survival tool. It had become the galaxy's immune system, identifying and neutralizing threats to life before they could spread. 5 years before the projected arrival of the extragalactic destroyers, Sujin stood once again before the Galactic Assembly. But now the chamber was much larger, filled with representatives from over 1,000 species. The Miaopa network of light on the viewing wall looked like a second galaxy made of pure cooperation. "The darkness comes," she announced, "but it will not find scattered, dying worlds like it consumed in other galaxies. It will find something that has never existed before, an entire galaxy united in defense of life itself." Young Ho watched from his position at the engineering control station. Around him, displays showed the status of defense networks that spanned dozens of star systems, powered by the combined efforts of species that had learned to work as one. "Network status?" Sujin asked him. "Fully operational across all sectors," he reported with pride. 1,200 species connected, defense systems integrated and coordinated, population evacuation protocols ready for implementation. Velthari Wisdom Councils? Kethan, now ancient but still sharp, spoke from his position among the Velthari representatives. "We are ready. Our knowledge of restoration will be needed after the battle to repair whatever damage occurs." "Human bridge teams?" Admiral Ari stood to answer. "All teams in position. If any species needs help integrating with the network during the crisis, we're ready to assist." Sujin nodded and turned back to the assembly. "My friends, when the Velthari first came to dying Earth, they asked for nothing but friendship. When humanity learned to save our saviors, we discovered that helping others made us stronger. Today, as we face the greatest threat the galaxy has ever known, we face it not as separate species fighting alone, but as one vast family that has chosen cooperation over competition." She paused, looking out at the representatives of 1,000 worlds. The destroyers think they will find easy prey in our galaxy. Instead, they will discover what happens when life itself decides to fight back. The assembly erupted in sounds that would have been chaos in the old days. Roars, songs, crystal chimes, dimensional harmonics, and human cheers all mixing together. But through the network, it wasn't chaos at all. It was the voice of an entire galaxy speaking as one. Outside the chamber, the stars pulsed with the coordinated energy of 1 trillion connected minds, all working together to protect the precious gift of life. The Velthari had helped humanity once. Humanity had repaid them by transforming the very nature of existence in the galaxy. Now, together with all the species they had saved, they would defend that transformation against the darkness between the stars. The network was ready. The galaxy was united. And somewhere in the vast web of quantum consciousness that connected 1,000 worlds, something that might have been the universe itself, smiled and prepared to show the destroyers what unified life could accomplish.